Let me ask you something honestly. Does your child struggle to wait even a few seconds sometimes? Maybe they interrupt conversations, repeat requests constantly,
All right.
or become
I see
upset the
you.
moment they hear the word wait. If that sounds familiar, I want to
Is
reassure
it
you
my turn yet?
this behavior is
Almost, sweetie. Go
incredibly
ahead.
common. It doesn't mean your child is spoiled or badly behaved. Their brain is still learning patience.
Daddy, I
Impulse
want
control
juice.
develops
Can I have
gradually
juice?
during early
Just a minute,
childhood
buddy.
through
But
everyday
I'm
experiences
thirsty.
where
Okay, here
children
we go.
practice waiting. And the
I
truth
want
is,
juice.
most children
Juice.
today simply do not get many
All right, I'm getting it
opportunities
right
to
now.
practice waiting. Modern
Yes, I'll
life
send the report
moves
by EOD.
extremely quickly,
Hold on a
and
second.
many things around
Hey, buddy,
children
look what Daddy's doing
respond
right now.
almost
Give me 5
instantly.
more minutes, okay?
Food appears quickly, screens respond immediately, and parents often rush to fix problems straight away.
I
So, of
know you're
course,
feeling sad right
children
now,
naturally
but we
begin
need to share the
expecting the
toys.
world to
Why
respond
don't we try playing
immediately to their
together?
requests. And
Look,
when
ice
something
cream. Can we
suddenly
get
takes
some, please?
longer,
No,
their
it's still
brain
close to
reacts
dinner
with
time.
frustration almost immediately.
One,
Many of us
two,
feel that this is
three,
misbehavior,
4,
but
5.
really, it's simply a brain that has not practiced waiting yet. However, and I love this, something interesting happens when we look at how patience develops in different cultures. For example, in Japan, children actually practice waiting from a surprisingly young age, not through punishment or strict discipline, but through small everyday moments.
Thank you for
Those
waiting so
small moments
patiently.
quietly teach and
Breakfast is
remodel the
almost
brain
ready.
that waiting is a normal part of life.
Here are your snacks,
And it's
sweetie.
a spectacular way
Yay,
that the
thank you,
Japanese are able to do
Papa.
this. I do the same for my daughter.
Oh, who wants the
What
cracker?
they
Do
do
you want
is
it?
use a simple idea that
Here
slowly
you go.
trains patience without stress or arguments. In
美味
Japan,
しい
there
で
is a
すね。
concept called
たくさん食べ
man,
てください。
which simply means a pause between two moments. Many Japanese parents intentionally create these small pauses throughout everyday interactions with their children. The pause in itself is not long or dramatic, and
Daddy,
children
Hmm?
often
look.
barely notice it
Hey,
happening.
sweetie, what you got there?
At the beginning, they would start with something extremely
Just one
small
second,
and
sweetie. Let me
manageable for
finish
their
this call.
child. For example, they'll start with just
2,
waiting 5
3,
seconds between the
4,
child's
5.
request and the parent's response. One situation like this is when your child asks for juice while you are finishing something in the kitchen. Instead of immediately stopping everything,
Can I have
you
a snack
simply
now?
finish that small
Please, a
task before
cookie.
responding.
Okay, let's see. You want a cookie?
And don't feel you're ignoring your
There's
child
your
or
snack, my
refusing their
love.
request, though I
Enjoy
understand if
it.
you do. You're simply allowing a small space between wanting something and receiving it. Call it a tiny timeout, because it's that very small gap where the brain quietly begins learning patience, where it matures most.
And loop it through
In many
here.
Western homes, we respond immediately to our children because we
There we
want to
go,
be
nice and
attentive
tight.
parents. And yes,
Yeah,
I
that's really
agree,
good value.
responsiveness is
Thank you.
extremely important for
Whoa,
healthy
look at
emotional
that,
attachment.
buddy.
But when we
Flying
solve
away.
everything for them immediately, children rarely experience the feeling of waiting. So, without those moments where we grow any patience, the brain never practices how to handle small delays. And this is exactly why the 5-second pause can become so powerful. Such a small amount of time, but a huge long term
Hey, take
change.
a quick
Because
break.
those
You've been at
tiny
it
little
for hours.
pauses are what quietly
Thanks,
train the
Dad.
brain to
I
tolerate
really needed
waiting,
that.
learn patience, and mature as a person. So, what is actually happening inside a child's brain during these tiny waiting moments? Well, at the start, young children rely heavily on a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. This is the area that helps control impulses, regulate emotions, and pause before reacting, aka patience. But in toddlers and preschoolers, this part of the brain is still immature and in developing
Hold
stages,
on, sweetie. Just
which
one
means
moment.
nor impulse
We need
control
to
or
say please
patience is
first.
not something they are born with, but rather learned. Instead, it develops slowly as children practice small moments of waiting in their normal lives.
Here's your
Each time your
card, my love.
child experiences a short
Go ahead.
pause before getting something they want, their brain practices controlling the urge to react immediately. They are taught that not everything is a now situation. And over time, those repeated pauses strengthen the brain circuits responsible for patience. Think of it a little like exercising a muscle, as if we're building brain muscle actually. And the more the brain practices waiting, the stronger that ability becomes. Just like us in the gym.
As signals repeatedly
That is
fire
why
across the
patience does
pathway,
not appear
it gets
suddenly
thicker
one
and
day to the
brighter,
next, even though
solidifying
we'd hope
memory
and
or
pray.
skill.
But unfortunately, it develops through hundreds of tiny experiences across everyday life. 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there, gradually building tolerance for waiting, and bam, we have a patient child. You know the saying, you work your butt off for years to become an overnight success? That's exactly this. So once the brain understands what waiting is, frustration during delays begins to fade away. Because in the end, the real skill is not forcing children to wait longer, because trust me, that'll backfire. It's actually guiding and teaching them slowly how to handle the waiting itself.
Toast.
So how do you actually begin using
Right
this
up, sweetie.
5-second pause in everyday life? The key is to start with situations that are non-urgent and happen naturally throughout the day.
Wow, that's amazing.
Imagine your
buddy.
child asks for a snack while you are already doing something in the kitchen.
Please.
Instead of immediately stopping what you are doing, simply finish that small task first.
Dolly.
That might mean
What
placing the
happened
spoon down,
Let me see if I
finishing
can
one
patch her up
sentence,
for you.
or folding one more shirt. The pause itself only needs to be very short. Even 5 seconds is more than plenty. You are not ignoring their need.
There
No
you
need
go,
to feel
careful.
guilty or bad about this, because it
Good.
doesn't make you a bad parent. You're simply creating a tiny moment of space before
Almost
responding,
got it.
just enough for their brain
There.
networks to mature ever so
Look at
slightly
that,
more.
You did it.
If we don't provide this space to grow, you'll note that they become limited with their emotions and feelings.
Good job. Thank you
By
for
doing
helping.
it this way, your child still receives help,
You're doing
attention,
such a
or the
good
snack they
job,
asked for,
sweetie.
but they experience a small delay that allows their brain to practice waiting. For most children, 5 seconds is just Goldilocks enough to feel manageable and not trigger
Here
frustration.
you go, little one. Fresh apple slices
Over
just
time,
for you.
those tiny pauses begin to feel normal rather than unusual. And as that happens, your child learns that wanting something and receiving it are not always the same moment. That understanding eventually goes on to become the first foundation of patience. First of many, that is. Which is why there is an important second step that makes this technique much more effective. And it gradually increases how long your child can comfortably wait. Let's talk about that for a second. Once your child becomes comfortable with small 5-second pauses, the next step is gradually extending that waiting time. This should always happen slowly and naturally so that waiting continues to feel manageable.
Okay, baby, let me finish this real
An
quick.
easy way, for example, would be after a week or two, you might allow the pause to reach 10 seconds. Later, it may become 15 seconds or perhaps 30 seconds for simple everyday situations. The important thing is that the increase happens gradually rather than suddenly to not startle their emotions. You and I both know that if a child is suddenly asked to wait several minutes, they will surely become overwhelmed. But just like everything else in life, if we slowly trickle changes through to their brains, it will adapt comfortably rather than jumping into a cold pool. Each slightly longer pause helps strengthen the brain circuits responsible for impulse control. Over time, waiting begins to
Alright,
feel
sweetie,
normal
let's build
rather
this
than
tower up
frustrating,
high.
which gives you a bit more peace and
There
quiet.
you go.
You might
Okay,
say
where does
something
the
along the
yellow one
lines
go?
of, I will
Yes,
help
right
you
there.
as soon as I finish putting this
Good
dish away.
job.
Or that I will bring your snack once I finish folding these 2 shirts. Do you mind waiting for a bit? This way, children quickly begin to understand that help is coming imminently, but it's okay to wait. The crucial and important key is always following through when you
There
say
we
you
go,
will.
Safe and sound.
Don't flake.
Now we just wait for them to bake.
When parents consistently return after a short wait, that's when children begin trusting the process. And this newfound trust that you've built allows them to tolerate waiting without anxiety
That is
or frustration.
absolutely amazing, sweetie.
But
I love
there
the
is
colors you
another
used. You did
important
such a
skill
good
children
job.
need during these waiting moments. They need to know what to do while they are waiting, because initially, they're not just going to stand there patiently waiting. Now, this next step is where many parents accidentally struggle without even realizing. And it's not their fault. Children are often told to wait, but they are rarely taught
Almost
what to
done,
do
sweetie.
during the waiting.
Okay, here I am.
For a young child, standing
All
still with
tied up,
nothing to do
ready to
can feel
go.
extremely difficult. Actually, even for an adult, this can be difficult.
You did
So the key is helping
well.
them develop simple waiting strategies, something to
one more
distract
for
them
the
from feeling the
stack.
long wait. These are
Wait, where
literally
did this
just
one
small
go?
activities they can do to pass the time,
Right
instead of
there.
looking at you and see when you finish your other task. For example, they might look at a book, or sing a quiet song, or even, what works with my daughter, to count to 10. Other children might stack blocks or play Lego, draw a quick picture, or explore a nearby toy. But the end goal is the same in each situation, to give their brain something calm to focus on instead. When children have a strategy, waiting begins to feel easier. If you think about it, it would work with us adults also. And as a plus, research shows children who learn coping strategies during delays develop patience more quickly. So when my daughter asks for something, I ask her to count to 10 while I finish. She's just learning her numbers, so she gets super excited about this. Or perhaps you give them a quick, easy chore to do, such as, go find your cup and bring it to me, please. Now, the grueling waiting period becomes an active and even in some cases, fun moment, rather than a frustrating pause. Over time, what you'll find is that children naturally begin choosing their own small activities while waiting. And that lovely, lovely independence, well, it's a powerful sign that patience is developing in your child.
That means it's
But
almost time to eat.
there is one final step that strengthens this skill even more and ties everything full circle. And surprisingly, it has very little to do with our children and more to do with how we are as adults. This final step in building patience is how or what we do in this entire situation. How we take in their request and how we behave are also very important. We've all heard and know that children are like sponges. Monkey see, monkey do is actually a crucial understanding at this age. Children learn patience not only from waiting themselves, but also from watching adults wait. It's an interesting phenomenon psychologists call modeling behavior. It's something all children around the world do without exception. My child, yours, and anyone else's, they are constantly observing how you react when things take longer than expected. For example, when you are standing in a queue at the airport or waiting for food at a restaurant,
Yes, sweetie.
if you appear
Want the
frustrated,
chocolate
rushed,
one or the
or
strawberry
impatient,
one?
they learn that waiting is unpleasant. On the other hand, if you remain calm and relaxed, their brain receives a very different message altogether. Because then, from
Look at
everything they have
these,
seen and
sweetie.
gathered, waiting becomes something normal
for us.
rather than stressful.
Yes, that is
Children
adorable.
naturally mirror the emotional responses they see from their parents. You know the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree? So if waiting is calm for you, it gradually becomes calmer for them as well. If it isn't for you, it won't be for them either. What I find helps is if you narrate these moments occasionally so they know exactly what you're feeling.
Is that a dog?
For example, while you're waiting in a queue at the bank, you might say, sometimes we have to wait our turn, and that is okay. These small messages and talks can help children understand waiting is part of everyday life. Over time, you'll definitely see how they begin to handle delays with much less frustration.
Eso, muy bien. Lo lograste.
However, and it's a big however, there is one mistake that can completely undo all of this progress. And it is something many parents accidentally do, including me, without realizing. Well, it's something because we don't think about it,
Okay, sweetie,
and we're
let's
not
get
trained
some.
for it either, unfortunately. We also need practice.
Mama.
It's when the
Yes,
waiting pause
sweetie.
technique is used
I hear
just
you, honey.
sometimes, but not
What is
consistently.
it?
One moment the parent pauses before responding, and the next moment they respond instantly. As you can imagine,
Oh,
for a
wow, that's
child,
great.
this makes
What is
waiting
it?
feel unpredictable, a bit hot and
I'll call
cold
you back.
essentially.
It's
Their
okay,
brain is
sweetie, I
already
got it.
learning 1,000 things a day, so it cannot learn a pattern if the experience
Of
keeps
course,
changing.
sweetie. How about
If
some apple
sometimes the
slices?
child receives help immediately, and other times they are asked to wait, what you'll get is that they will begin repeating requests more frequently,
Okay, look at
hoping
this.
for the
We connect
faster
the
response.
red and the blue.
And
See?
unfortunately, this will actually
Now you
increase
put the yellow
whining
one right
instead
on
of
top.
reducing it.
Mommy,
Oops.
when is dinner
But,
ready? I'm
the
hungry.
solution
Almost
is
ready,
right there
honey.
for you to
Just give
take
me
it.
one more minute,
Something
okay?
very simple and easy, actually. It's consistency. Consistency allows the brain to recognize a predictable pattern, like muscle memory. It's so when a child experiences the same small pause
Yes, of
every
course.
time they make a
Just
request,
give me 1 second.
their brain, sooner or later, will begin to expect that small delay each and every time. And when the brain expects this waiting period,
It's okay,
it reacts
sweetie.
with far
You
less
did
frustration.
wonderfully. We can
So
try
the
again
real goal
tomorrow.
is not perfection,
Okay,
far from it.
Mommy.
We're not training soldiers in the army at the ripe age of 3. It's simply practicing the pause game as consistently as possible. All adults need to do it, not just some in the
Here
house.
is your
Now that we
warm
have that
milk,
understood,
sweetie.
let's quickly bring
I
all of
waited
these
just
ideas
for
together
you.
so you can start using them today. So let's bring everything together nicely in a way that feels simple and manageable. Step 1.
There's your
Start
juice, buddy.
introducing a small 5-second pause before non-urgent requests. Second, gradually extend that waiting time as your child becomes more comfortable. It won't work always, but over time it'll stick. Third, teach your child simple things to do while they are waiting. Go find something small
What an
or count to
amazing
10, for
drawing. Did you
example.
use all the colors
Fourth,
yourself?
remember that your child is learning patience by watching how you wait. They mirror you in so many ways. And finally, keep the whole process as calm and consistent as possible. The more you repeat and rinse, the easier it'll be. So long as you remember, this is not about ignoring your child or becoming less responsive as a parent. It's about helping their brain practice a skill it has not mastered yet, something that will help them throughout their lives. And we all know that patience grows through small, repeated moments,
Having a bit of
not
trouble
through
there?
one big lesson.
Let's see.
So if your child struggles with waiting right now, that is completely normal. It simply means they still need practice, support, and lots of calm repetition. And the wonderful thing is,
Look
you
at
don't
that
have to
silly
wait.
monkey.
You can start
He
building
found
that
a
skill
banana.
today. 5 seconds may sound tiny, but tiny moments repeated daily gets compounded and can create real change. So start small, stay calm, and let patience grow little by little. If this video helped, subscribe for more simple, evidence-based parenting tips each week. And if you take away even one thing from me, please remember, you are doing a much better job than you think. Loads of cuddles for your little one, and I'll see you in the next video.